Imagine a man, a shadow in the dim light of an airport, nearly indistinguishable from the bustling crowd. A night flight, slicing through the dark sky like a blade. A black briefcase, holding an explosive secret. And a leap into the unknown. A plunge into darkness that would make him vanish forever, like a legend whispered on the wind. Who is D.B. Cooper? A criminal mastermind? A desperate man? A ghost? What drove him to commit the only unsolved air piracy in U.S. history? A feat that defied logic and law. And, most importantly, what happened to him after he hurled himself into the void amidst a raging storm with $200,000 in cash and 4 parachutes, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions? This is not just the story of a daring crime. It is the story of an enigmatic mind, a meticulously orchestrated plan, and a mystery that, for over half a century, continues to haunt us, to make us question human nature, the fragility of security, and the relentless persistence of curiosity. Prepare for an intimate and revealing journey, where every detail, every clue, every theory brings us closer to, and yet further from, the elusive truth, like a dream that fades at dawn. It was the eve of Thanksgiving, November 24th, 1971. Portland International Airport in Oregon buzzed with the routine of an ordinary day, tinged with the festive anticipation of an approaching holiday, a blend of haste and expectation. Amid the hurried crowd, one man stood out for his discretion, almost invisible in the terminal's bustle, like a shadow gliding among the living. He approached the Northwest Orient Airlines counter as Dan Cooper, a simple, common name that would soon become synonymous with mystery and audacity. He wore a dark suit, impeccably tailored, a crisp white shirt like freshly fallen snow, a slim tie, and an overcoat that enveloped him in an aura of mystery, as if he sought to blend into the encroaching night. His eyes, dark and piercing, seemed to observe every movement, every whisper, every detail of his surroundings, revealing no emotion or intent, like 2 windows to an unfathomable soul. He purchased a one-way ticket to Seattle on Flight 305, a Boeing 727. He paid in cash, $20 bills, a detail that would later pique investigators' interest. For him, Seattle was not just a destination on a map. It was the stage for a meticulously orchestrated plan, a point of no return in his journey into the unknown. Inside the aircraft, the atmosphere was calm. The soft hum of the engines, the muffled conversations of passengers, and the scent of coffee and kerosene mingled in the air, creating a sense of normalcy that would soon be shattered. Cooper chose seat 18E in the last row, a strategic position that gave him a clear view of the cabin while affording some privacy, away from prying eyes. He ordered a bourbon and 7-Up, a simple, almost mundane gesture that stood in stark contrast to the complexity and audacity of his thoughts, a silent toast to what was to come. The flight attendant, Florence Schaffner, a young, attentive professional with a practiced smile, served him without suspicion, unaware of the storm brewing in the gaze of that man. The 30-minute flight to Seattle departed promptly at 2:50 p.m. The plane ascended into the sky, leaving behind Portland's urban landscape, heading toward the gray autumn clouds that seemed to foreshadow the drama about to unfold. On board, in addition to the 6-person crew, Captain William A. Scott, an experienced and respected pilot. First Officer William Bill J. Radizak, his attentive co-pilot. Flight Engineer Harold E. Anderson, responsible for the aircraft's mechanics. And Flight Attendants Alice Hancock, Tina Mucklow, and Florence Schaffner, all trained to handle emergencies but unprepared for what was to come. There were 36 passengers. Each was absorbed in their own thoughts, their holiday expectations, their dreams and worries, oblivious to the danger lurking among them. No one could have imagined that, in mere moments, the lives of everyone on board and the history of aviation would change forever, marked by an act of unprecedented audacity, a crime that would become legend. Schaffner, seated in the jump seat directly behind Cooper, felt a light touch on her arm. He handed her a note, folded with precision. At first, she thought it might be a phone number from a lonely businessman, a harmless flirtation, and tucked it into her purse without much thought, a reflexive gesture amid the flight's routine. But Cooper's low, firm voice, a whisper carrying an unexpected weight, a restrained urgency, made her reconsider. "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Florence's world collapsed in an instant. Her blood ran cold. Her heart raced, a frantic drumbeat in her ears, drowning out the sound of the engines. Her hands trembled as she opened the note, the paper seeming to burn her fingers. The handwriting, in neat, almost artistic capital letters, was clear and direct. "Miss, I have a bomb in my briefcase and want you to sit beside me." Terror took hold, freezing her veins, paralyzing her thoughts. Cooper, sensing her hesitation, briefly opened the briefcase, just enough for her to glimpse its contents. 8 red cylinders, arranged in 2 rows, connected by thin wires to a large cylindrical battery. A bomb. The threat was real, tangible, and the calm before the storm had ended, giving way to suffocating suspense, a primal fear that would spread through the aircraft like a contagious disease. With Florence Schaffner seated beside him, pale and tense, but striving to maintain composure, Cooper dictated his demands. There was no panic in his voice, no trace of nervousness, only a cold, calculated determination that contrasted with the life-or-death situation he had created. He wanted $200,000 in cash, in unmarked $20 bills, and 4 parachutes, 2 front and 2 back. The choice of 2 sets of parachutes was a cunning detail, a masterstroke suggesting he might take a hostage, thus discouraging authorities from providing faulty or sabotaged equipment. It was a sign he had considered every detail, every possible twist. Schaffner, her mind reeling but maintaining the professional calm she'd been trained for, wrote down the demands on a piece of paper and took them to the cockpit, her heart still pounding erratically. Captain William A. Scott, upon learning of the situation, felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. The lives of his passengers and crew were in his hands. He instructed Schaffner to remain in the cockpit and document everything, turning her into an eyewitness chronicler of the fateful day. News of the hijacking quickly reached Northwest Orient Airlines headquarters in Minnesota and then the FBI and Seattle police. The country's security apparatus sprang into action, mobilizing resources and personnel. Donald Nyrob, the airline's president, a pragmatic and decisive man, authorized the ransom payment without hesitation and ordered full cooperation with the hijacker. The priority was the safety of the passengers and crew. The money was secondary. Meanwhile, Flight 305 circled above Puget Sound for about 2 hours, a tense and silent aerial ballet, like a wounded bird hovering over the city. This time was critical for gathering the money and parachutes, a complex and urgent logistical operation. To the passengers, unaware of the imminent danger surrounding them, it was explained that the delay was due to a minor mechanical issue, a white lie to prevent panic. The tension was palpable for the crew, an invisible weight hanging over all, though most passengers remained in their bubble of ignorance, patiently awaiting arrival, eager to reunite with loved ones and celebrate the holiday. Tina Mucklow, another flight attendant, took on the role of liaison between Cooper and the crew, sitting beside the hijacker, a dangerous and uncomfortable position. She described Cooper as strangely at ease, almost relaxed, and even familiar with the area, as if he had flown over it countless times. He pointed to the window and remarked, with a surprising calm that baffled her, "Looks like Tacoma down there," as the plane flew over the city. When he learned the parachutes would come from McChord Air Force Base, he noted with precision that suggested prior knowledge or careful research. McChord's only about 20 minutes from Seattle-Tacoma. Mucklow described him as calm, polite, showing no signs of nervousness, almost courteous. He wasn't nervous. He seemed quite pleasant and wasn't cruel or nasty, she later reported, an observation that added complexity to the hijacker's persona, making him even more enigmatic. Their conversation was peculiar, almost surreal, given the gravity of the situation. Mucklow, trying to understand his motives, to break the ice, or perhaps find a crack in his armor, asked why he had chosen Northwest Airlines. He laughed, a dry, humorless sound that didn't reach his eyes, and replied, "It's not because I have a grudge against your airline. It's just because I have a grudge." An enigmatic phrase that revealed nothing. He vaguely explained that the flight simply met his needs. He asked where she was from, and she answered that she was from Pennsylvania but lived in Minneapolis. Cooper commented that Minnesota was a very nice country, a comment that seemed out of place, almost human, an attempt at normalcy amidst the chaos. But when she, in turn, with the courage the situation demanded, asked where he was from, the mask of calm fell for a moment. He became irritated, his voice hardened, his eyes gleamed with a cold intensity, and he refused to answer. The identity of D.B. Cooper remained an enigma, a ghost in a dark suit, with an audacious plan and a secret locked away, which he seemed determined to take with him to the grave or wherever fate would take him. After landing in Seattle, tension reached its peak, cutting through the air like a knife. Cooper's demands were met with almost eerie efficiency, demonstrating how seriously the authorities regarded the threat. The money, $200,000 in $20 bills, carefully counted and inspected, and the 4 parachutes, 2 main and 2 reserve, were handed over, each item inspected by Cooper with a sharp, suspicious look, like a predator examining its prey. The passengers were finally released, descending from the plane with a mixture of relief and confusion, many of them still not understanding the true extent of the drama they had witnessed, grateful to be on solid ground. The plane was refueled, the engines roaring once again, ready for the next stage of Cooper's plan, a stage that was even more dangerous and uncertain. He then instructed the crew to take off again, heading to Mexico City, with a refueling stop in Reno, Nevada, a long route which would give him time and cover. On board, now only Cooper and the essential crew, Captain Scott, First Officer Radizak, Flight Engineer Anderson, and Flight Attendant Tina Mucklow, who would become the key witness to the final act. The aircraft took off, diving into the night's darkness and into a storm that was forming, with strong winds and relentless rain, a scene worthy of a thriller, as nature seemed to conspire with the hijacker's fate. About 30 minutes after taking off from Seattle, while the Boeing 727 flew over southwest Washington, amidst turbulence and the deafening noise of rain against the fuselage, Cooper made his final move. With disturbing calm, contrasting with the fury of the elements outside, he strapped the briefcase with the $200,000 to his body, a weight that represented either his freedom or his ruin, the price of his audacity. Then, with precise and determined movements, he opened the rear door of the aircraft, exposing the interior to the howling wind and the darkness of the night, a black and frozen abyss. He activated the rear staircase, a unique feature of the Boeing 727, which extended into the void, a bridge to the unknown, to oblivion, or to glory. Flight attendant Tina Mucklow, the last to see him, described the scene with a mix of horror and fascination, an image that would haunt her for years, etched in her memory with the clarity of a nightmare. He leapt into the void, amidst the darkness and torrential rain, with the $200,000 and 2 parachutes, a jump into history. The wind howled like a funeral lament, the storm roared like a wild beast, and D.B. Cooper disappeared into the night, leaving no trace, as if he had been swallowed by the sky itself, instantly becoming a legend. The plane continued its flight, lighter, but carrying an invisible weight, the absence of that mysterious man, a deafening silence that would echo for decades, an enigma that would defy logic and reason, feeding the imagination of millions. D.B. Cooper's leap was an unprecedented act of audacity, a demonstration of courage or madness, depending on perspective. At an altitude of approximately 10,000 feet, about 3,000 meters, in adverse weather conditions, freezing rain, strong winds blowing over 200 miles per hour, total darkness, and temperatures below zero. He jumped from a moving plane, defying logic, the laws of physics, and death itself. The drop zone, a densely forested and mountainous area of Washington state, known for its thick vegetation, rugged terrain, and fast-flowing rivers, made survival unlikely, almost impossible, even for an experienced parachutist. The FBI, which was already on high alert, tracking the flight's every move, immediately launched one of the largest manhunts in American history, mobilizing hundreds of agents, helicopters with powerful searchlights, tracking dogs, and civilian volunteers. Search teams were mobilized. The area was combed by land and air, meter by meter, in an operation that lasted weeks, months. But D.B. Cooper had vanished, like a ghost dissolving into the air, leaving behind only questions and a trail of mystery. The question that hung in the air, pounding the minds of everyone involved, from investigators to ordinary citizens, was, did he survive? Or had nature, relentless and indifferent, claimed its price, turning him into just another unsolved mystery, another story to be told around campfire? The search for D.B. Cooper became an obsession for the FBI, a permanent stain on its record of solved cases, a challenge to its reputation for efficiency. For 45 years, the case remained open, one of the longest and most expensive in the agency's history, generating a massive investigative file, a web of reports, testimonies, theories, false leads, and accumulated frustrations. Thousands of leads were followed, each one investigated with the hope that it would be the key to solving the enigma, the thread that would lead to the man behind the name Dan Cooper. Hundreds of suspects were interrogated, their lives scoured for any connection to the hijacker, any detail that could incriminate them. But Cooper's identity and whereabouts remained a mystery, a ghost that mocked the law's efforts, slipping through the fingers of investigators like sand. With every new theory, every new piece of evidence, no matter how tenuous, the hope of solving the enigma would flare up, only to be frustrated by the lack of conclusive proof, a link that could definitively tie the man to the crime, closing the case once and for all. In 1980, 9 years after the hijacking, a small portion of the ransom money was found, a ray of hope amid the darkness of uncertainty. Brian Ingram, an 8-year-old boy, on a family excursion along the Columbia River near Vancouver, Washington, stumbled upon a packet of $20 bills, partially buried in the sand. It was $5,800 in 3 bundles, deteriorated by time and water, but still identifiable. The bills, confirmed by their serial numbers, were part of Cooper's ransom, irrefutable proof that the money had been there in that region. The discovery reignited public interest in the case, generating a new wave of speculation and theories, and prompting the FBI to concentrate its search efforts in the area. However, despite intensive efforts, no other significant clues were found. The rest of the money, the majority of the ransom, was never recovered, leading the FBI to speculate, with increasing conviction, that Cooper had not survived the jump. After all, if he were alive, why wouldn't he have spent the money? Why leave a fortune decaying by the riverbank? The absence of the remaining money was a silent but powerful piece of evidence that Cooper's fate may have been fatal, his body and the rest of the money lost forever in the vastness of the wilderness. The physical evidence was scarce, almost non-existent, making the investigation even more challenging, a real puzzle with missing pieces. Aside from the found bills, there were only a few partial fingerprints on the plane of insufficient quality for positive identification. A black tie clip left on Cooper's seat, which contained traces of DNA but didn't match any known suspect, and a Raleigh cigarette also found on the plane. None of these clues, no matter how thoroughly they were analyzed with the most advanced forensic techniques, led to a clear identification. The FBI considered various theories. Was Cooper an experienced parachutist, a former soldier with survival training, capable of facing the extreme conditions of the jump? Did he have accomplices, a network of support that helped him disappear, launder the money, and build a new identity? Did he die in the jump, his body lost in the vastness of the forest or the freezing waters of the Columbia River, devoured by wild animals, or simply disintegrated by time? The lack of a body, the absence of any significant trace, turned D.B. Cooper into a legend, an anti-hero who defied the system and disappeared without a trace, a specter haunting the popular imagination. With every passing year, the mystery deepened, feeding the imagination of amateur and professional detectives, writers, filmmakers, and curious minds who continue to search for the truth behind the man who vanished into the sky, a search that seemed endless, a legacy of uncertainty. If you're enjoying this journey through the mysteries of humanity and want to continue unraveling enigmas with us, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Your participation is essential so that we can continue bringing quality content and exploring the darkest corners of history and human nature. Operation Norjack, the code name given by the FBI to the investigation of the D.B. Cooper case, became one of the most extensive and frustrating in the agency's history. Over 80 agents were assigned to the case in the first few months, working tirelessly day and night, following every lead, no matter how remote it seemed. The initial search area, centered around the probable jump zone in southwestern Washington, was a logistical nightmare. Dense, impenetrable forests, fast-flowing, freezing rivers, mountainous and rugged terrain, and brutal winter weather conditions made the sweep almost impossible. Civilian volunteers, rescue teams, and even military personnel were mobilized, scouring every square meter. But nature seemed to conspire with the hijacker, hiding its secrets with relentless efficiency. With each passing day without results, frustration grew, and the legend of Cooper expanded, fueled by the authorities' ineffectiveness in capturing him. FBI agents interviewed hundreds of people, from passengers and crew of Flight 305 to experienced parachutists, pilots, ex-military personnel, and anyone who might have had any information, no matter how small. Every detail of Cooper's description, his physical appearance, his clothes, his calm and polite behavior, his apparent knowledge of the region and aviation, was analyzed and reanalyzed in the hope of finding a pattern, a clue that would lead to his identity. Psychological profiles were created based on his modus operandi, suggesting that he was an intelligent, methodical man with military experience and a deep understanding of parachuting and aviation. However, these profiles, no matter how detailed, were never enough to put a face to the ghost. The discovery of $5,800 by Brian Ingram in 1980 was a turning point in the investigation, reigniting hope that the case could finally be solved. How did the money end up there? Was it carried by the current of the river? Or had Cooper survived the jump but lost part of the money during his escape? The few physical pieces of evidence left by Cooper on the plane were subjected to exhaustive forensic analyses, using the most advanced technologies available at the time, and later, with the advancement of science, reanalyzed with more modern techniques. The partial fingerprints, though insufficient for positive identification, were compared with millions of records in criminal databases, without success. The tie clip, an apparently insignificant object, became one of the most intriguing pieces of the puzzle. Additionally, traces of titanium and other rare elements were found on the clip, suggesting that Cooper may have worked in the aerospace industry or in a field dealing with advanced materials. This lead, though promising, never led to a concrete identification. It only added another layer of mystery to Cooper's figure, making him even more elusive. Over the decades, the figure of D.B. Cooper became an icon of mystery, an enigma that generated countless theories about his identity and fate, each more fascinating and improbable than the last. Some believed he was a former soldier, possibly a Green Beret or a CIA parachutist, with low-altitude jump experience and deep knowledge of the region, capable of surviving the harsh conditions of the jump and escaping the FBI's manhunt. Others suggested that he was an ordinary criminal, an opportunist who had an unbelievable stroke of luck and managed to escape unscathed, living a quiet, anonymous life with the ransom money. The list of suspects grew exponentially, including names such as Richard McCoy Jr., Kenneth Christensen, William J. Smith, Lynn Doyle Cooper, whose name matched the one used on the ticket, and Dwayne Weber. Each of them had their peculiarities, complex life stories, questionable alibis, and circumstantial evidence, but none had irrefutable proof that could finally close the case and give a face to the man who vanished into the sky, the man who deceived everyone. Richard McCoy Jr., a Vietnam veteran and experienced parachutist, Sunday school teacher, and family man, was one of the main suspects, to the point that many believed he was, in fact, D.B. Cooper. He committed a remarkably similar air hijacking in April 1972, just a few months after Cooper's incident, demanding $500,000 of parachutes and jumping from a Boeing 727. McCoy was captured a few days later, thanks to a tip-off, and convicted for his crime. He always vehemently denied being D.B. Cooper, although the similarity between the crimes was striking, almost a mirror image, with identical modus operandi. The FBI, however, never managed to definitively link him to the Cooper case, leaving a shadow of doubt hanging over his innocence or his cunning in committing two similar crimes without being connected to the first. Kenneth Christensen, a former parachutist with Northwest Orient Airlines, who worked as a flight attendant and later as a mechanic, was also considered a strong candidate. He had a history of financial troubles, enjoyed bourbon whiskey, the drink Cooper ordered, and smoked Raleigh cigarettes, the brand found on the plane. Furthermore, he bought a house with cash shortly after the hijacking. However, his physical description did not exactly match Cooper's, and the evidence against him was inconclusive, based more on coincidences and speculation than on concrete facts. His family, after his death, found letters and objects that suggested his involvement, but nothing that could be proven. Dwayne Weber, a former convict with a turbulent past full of small crimes and lies, confessed on his deathbed in 1995 to his wife, Jo Weber, that he was D.B. Cooper. He allegedly said, "I am Dan Cooper." His wife, initially skeptical, began investigating her husband's past and found evidence that seemed to corroborate the story, including an old airline ticket to Seattle, maps of the jump area, and newspaper clippings about the case. However, the DNA found on Cooper's tie, one of the few concrete physical pieces of evidence, did not match Weber's, and the FBI, after years of investigation, dismissed the possibility, once again frustrating the hope for a solution and leaving Joe Weber with eternal doubt. Operation Norjack was officially suspended in 2016 after 45 years of investigation, with the FBI stating that, while the case remained open, resources would be redirected to other priorities. However, the legend of D.B. Cooper continues to live on, fueling the imagination of millions and defying logic, a testament to the persistence of mystery and human curiosity. The mystery of D.B. Cooper has become a cultural phenomenon, a recurring theme in popular culture, inspiring books, films such as Without a Trace with Robert Duvall, TV series such as Prison Break and Loki, music and documentaries. He represents the human fascination with the unknown, the audacity of an individual who defied the authorities, and the idea of a perfect crime, an achievement that remains unattainable, a dream for some, a nightmare for others. The legend of D.B. Cooper continues to linger in the air, a reminder that sometimes reality can be far more intriguing than fiction, and that some secrets are destined to remain buried in time, untouched by the relentless pursuit of truth, guarded by the vastness of nature and the complexity of the human mind. Regardless of his identity or final fate, whether he died in the jump or lived a long and prosperous life with the stolen money, D.B. Cooper left a lasting and undeniable legacy in the history of aviation. His hijacking, an act of unprecedented audacity, and the numerous imitators who emerged in the following years, trying, and mostly failing, to replicate his feat, forced a complete and urgent review of air security protocols worldwide. Before Cooper, airport security was minimal, almost neglected, based on a naive trust in passengers' good nature. There were no metal detectors, baggage inspection was superficial when it existed, and passenger identification was less rigorous, often limited to a name on a ticket. After Cooper's case, airport security was drastically reinforced, transforming into the complex, multifaceted system we know today, which we sometimes find inconvenient, but is essential for our protection. Metal detectors were installed at every terminal, becoming standard procedure for all passengers. Baggage inspection, both carry-on and checked, became mandatory and exhaustive, using X-ray technologies and other detection methods. Passengers who paid in cash for tickets on the day of the flight or exhibited other behaviors considered suspicious began to be subjected to additional scrutiny, a preventive measure to avoid future incidents. The D.B. Cooper case, although unsolved and still shrouded in mystery, served as a catalyst for the modernization of global air security. It changed the way people traveled and how airports operated, setting new standards for protection and surveillance, which evolved over time, especially after other tragic events like the September 11th attacks. Cooper's ghost, the man who vanished into the sky, remains a constant reminder of the vulnerability of systems and the need for constant vigilance, innovation, and adaptation to new threats. His story, an endless mystery, is a testament to humanity's ability to innovate, both for good and for ill, and to the persistence of the search for answers in a world full of enigmas, where truth often hides in the shadows of time, waiting to be revealed, or perhaps to remain hidden forever. And so the plane landed, but the man did not. The money was partially found, but the fate of its bearer remains unknown. The mystery of D.B. Cooper persists, a silent echo amid the deafening noise of the modern world, an unfinished melody that resonates in the minds of all who know his story, a question mark suspended in time. He reminds us, in a powerful way, that not all stories have a clear ending, that some truths are lost in the mists of time, like footprints in the sand erased by the tide, and that human curiosity, that driving force of discovery and imagination, is a flame that, once lit, never goes out, burning with increasing intensity with each new detail, each new theory. What would you do if you had the chance to solve this mystery? What is your theory about what really happened to D.B. Cooper? Do you believe he survived, became a reclusive millionaire, or did nature take its toll on that stormy night? Share your thoughts and your own investigations in the comments below. Your perspective is valuable and can help us put more pieces of this intricate puzzle together, shedding a little more light on this mystery. And if this story touched you in any way, if it sparked your curiosity and made you reflect on the limits of human audacity and the persistence of enigmas, consider subscribing to the channel so we can continue exploring together the mysteries that shape our humanity, the stories that make us feel, think, and remember for days, perhaps for a lifetime. Until the next journey into the unknown, where the truth, however elusive, always waits to be discovered or to challenge us with its silence.